Which was, 6, 7, 8. Which is this?
Okay.
Oh, are you at large? Yeah. So I can
I couldn't hear anything.
Right? Maybe I don't want to. Let me think
Oh,
about
all
it.
right.
I'll get back to you.
All right. It'll work. I can't remember staying on the
I'll
ground
talk
this
to you
long
later.
without
Let's
melting
do
getting more.
this.
Oh, I just got the door slammed on my face. I got the door slammed. I have to learn to walk with the streets of life.
Yes, you may have.
Look at this. It's a full house over there. I think we should take a picture.
Mr. Peter, I'll fly.
Well, I don't, can they see you on the camera?
It's because of public hearing.
Oh, it's a public hearing. Hi, Auditor. Hi, Kenna. How are you? Really well. I don't think I've talked to you at all this year either. Well, it looks like we have a big turnout for that public hearing.
Expect me.
Get to my notes page.
I think the kids want different things in town, but they don't want growth. You
Is that
see
the
that one on
truth?
Facebook the other day? He wants to put a roundabout in there, an Elmer Lot.
I saw that. I was like, oh, they're going to put in around. I almost bid that one. I was like, what? We're putting a roundabout in?
We capture all those houses. Oh my God. That's as beautiful as it is now.
Get this.
Call the meeting to order. If everyone could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silent reflection, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk, will we have roll call, please?
Councilman Eads?
Here.
Councilman Hayes?
Present.
Councilman Hitt?
Here.
Councilman McDaniels?
Here.
Councilman Stahl?
What did you say?
Councilman Stahl?
Present. I didn't hear you say my name.
Councilman Norman?
Present.
Councilwoman Trainer?
Here.
Okay, did everybody get a chance to take a look at the minutes from January 2nd? Any questions, concerns? Okay. All in favor to pass?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. On to public hearings.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to move legislation 207-24 to February the 20th due to legal requirements that the city was unaware of.
Second.
What are those legal requirements?
There was some notice issues.
Oh, okay.
Clerk, could we have
Oh,
call,
sorry.
please?
Councilman Hayes?
Yes.
Councilman Hitt?
Yes.
Councilman McDaniels?
Yes.
Councilman Stahl?
Yes.
Councilman Norman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Trainer?
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion to go into public hearing, exit regular meeting?
Did you
Do we want to continue?
I didn't hear
the
your
other
name.
two?
eat?
We can do. the
Oh,
other one.
Councilman Eads.
No.
Sorry.
No.
No, resolution 210-24 we can continue with.
I'm not sure we want to.
Yeah, I mean, they're all interconnected.
They're all kind of interconnected. I would make a motion that would move the resolution regarding the NCA's 210, is it 210-24, to the February
20th.
20th date that was just proposed.
Hold on.
I think everybody's ready to go on the NCA portion. I mean, just as a consideration, I think they're prepared to move forward. It has been publicized, but we have asked to continue the first public hearing. So it could be continued, but I do believe that the folks are here that are requesting our hearing.
I think the issue is that you have to re-notify all.
We would have to notify.
They better have the public
So,
hearing.
so can you,
We can, yeah, you can have a public hearing, go ahead and hold it, and then just continue to leave the resolution on the table so that it can be voted on at a later date, but you can still go forward with the public hearing and hear the presentation that they're here for.
Okay.
So Karen, I'm a little bit confused.
Okay.
So 207 and 210, we both had hearings for today.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can expand a little bit.
Thank you.
The notice on 20724 is a notice that goes to the property owners only.
Okay.
Property owners, of course, are here and are very aware of it, but there's a legal requirement that there's a specific notice that they needed to get so many days before the hearing date. I've been coordinating with Bricker quite a bit on all the notices and publications that are supposed to be done, but this one did not end up happening until a time that we're going to have to reschedule 207. Okay. The notices on 210 were appropriate, sent out and published in the paper. The difference is that there was a personal notice that needed to go to the property owners, which, like I said, are here and aware of it, but we want to make sure we have all of our, everything done exactly the way it should be under the statute. So the developers had requested to move 207 in order to make sure that that was perfected. But 210, we do have the appropriate notices, and as I said, I believe they're prepared to go forward tonight.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yep.
So is there a motion to move out of regular council?
I make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to have included with all this, the London Department of Government Efficiency to oversee this and all the other departments. And that could include Mr. Eads, myself, and any other council members that want to be a part of it.
Say it again?
You got to repeat that.
To include with all this, a Department of Government Efficiency for London. Just make sure we don't want to do something that later, backfires on us with this or any other department.
It's going to be an interesting meeting. I see that.
Does that make sense?
At this point, just going forward with the hearing is just allowing them to make their presentation and take any questions from any concerned audience members. You certainly do not have to take action on something
Tonight.
just because it's heard as a public hearing. You're just allowing them to go forward with their presentation. It's not a commitment of any sort. to
Yeah,
the
I'm talking
legislation.
about with the legislation to
Okay.
include it.
So you're,
That might be something we do when we get to old business. If we go into the public hearing,
Okay. However you want to do it then.
okay. Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Second on which one, sir?
The public hearing, going into a public hearing.
Okay.
Councilman Hitt,
Yes.
Councilman McDaniels,
Yes.
Councilman Stahl,
Yes.
Councilman Norman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Trainer,
Yes.
Councilman Eads,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes.
Yes.
Okay. Here for the public hearing, Resolution 210-24. You guys like to speak on that?
Come on.
My name's Wes Smith. I represent the property owners in question. I know we've had a lot of discussion on the NCA subject, and I know there's a lot more discussion to be had as it progresses. So we're here for any questions that you guys may have, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here in front of you.
Is there anybody else out there in the audience like this? Speak on that? If not, I just say we wait until we get to it in the old business, if that's all right. Okay, with nothing else, is there a motion to exit public hearing?
Make a motion.
Second.
Councilman McDaniels,
Yes.
Councilman Stahl,
Yes.
Councilman Norman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Trainer, Councilman Eads,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes,
Yes.
Councilman Hitt.
Yes.
Okay, for communications and announcements, the mayor has some appointments for the historic downtown Revitalization Committee, the three he has down for is Christy Houston, Jonathan Oldman, and David Gunzi. You guys have any
I have a question.
questions or concerns
Is
on
this
these?
is this an all or none vote, or if there's, I mean, I like them all, I'm going to vote for all of them, but I just wonder, is it a situation where it is all or none, or if there was one on there that we didn't necessarily want, could we, how does that work?
I believe these are three that approached the mayor about being on this board.
So it is an all or none vote, correct?
Yes.
No, my appointment.
The appointments.
So he's asking if he can amend it to take somebody off of it.
No, I don't want to, I'm just asking for future reference, if there's someone on these appointments that we, like the last time, I'm going to be frank, I didn't want Steve Lalonick on it, but I felt that it was a all or nothing thing, so, and that is why I voted
Well,
no.
I think that's why I sent him out early. So
Right.
if you have an issue, reach out to me and say, hey, maybe he's not the best person. But I can tell you that the tax board is what Steve is on. The tax board, since I've been on council and mayor for 14 years, has met once.
Well, no, listen, I'm not trying to argue, I'm just
Oh,
saying,
okay.
I'm saying procedurally wise, if in the future you brought a list to us like this one, and there was someone on the list that we didn't want, but we wanted the other two, and we had to vote.
I would guess that we could have a discussion about that, and then I would have to pull one off because it's my appointments, and then they would have to approve that.
I mean, we would need to take a look at it. The appointments that are coming to council do need to be approved. My belief is we probably could work it out so that it could be one at a time. We may need to, that might be something we want to address in the next round of council rules, actually.
Okay.
Because right now I don't think it's clarified and it's presented to you as a list to vote yes or no. But I think with some discussion or council rules, we could probably clarify that so that it could be split up. I don't see why that couldn't happen as a process.
Okay, I was just asking, thank you.
Ms. Law Director, I can't hear you very well. So I think, I mean, just to reiterate the question, would it be possible to say that these appointments, we could break those out and vote on those one by one if council desired? So what would the procedure be at that point? So at the last meeting that I presided, I was a little unsure of whether this was a slate or not, but if a council member would have said, I would like to break these votes out, what would have the correct procedure have been?
Yeah, if you're making the request of the mayor to provide his appointments to you one at a time, that's something that I think could be accommodated. Right.
You want to go right down the list and say,
Mhm.
okay, Christie for the Sewer Downtown Revitalization Committee, vote on that.
Yeah.
And then go to the next one, vote on that. Go to the next one, vote on that. Or you can do that as a slate, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it could be whichever, there's no rule under council rules about which way you would need to do it. So I suppose I would defer to council president. He certainly could split it up so that you are approving one at a time, or you could request a slate. It sounds like council's preference would be to request one at a time. And that's certainly a way that you could vote if you want to split them up that way. There's no reason that they have to come together. I think that's just the way it was presented.
Really, the mayor doesn't even have to bring it to council, do you?
Well, certain appointments, he can make an appointment and they are supposed to be approved by council. Some appointments he does not have to bring to council, and some he has done just as a
Courtesy.
courtesy. The ones tonight, I believe, do all need council approval, though.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say I really appreciate the fact that you sent those questionnaires over with the answers so that we understood a little bit more about these folks before we voted on those.
Very welcome.
Any other discussion on this? All in favor of these appointments?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now on to audience concerns. We do have one. Raymond Anthony, please come up and state your name and address for the record, please.
Raymond Anthony, 521 Eaton Street. I just have a couple of things. Today at 5 minutes to 6, I went again on the city council website. The January 16th agenda was not posted. The January 2nd agenda meeting was not posted till like an hour and a half before the actual city council meeting. Can someone explain to me why it doesn't appear?
Right. My guess is, I don't know. Normally, I think
So,
Michael sends
so
that.
normally how it happens is the clerk will send me the minutes, and then I go to the website, and I have access to edit the website, but it has to be approved by our administration. So,
I'm not talking about the minutes, I'm talking the agenda.
yeah, the agenda, that's what I'm talking
Okay.
about. It's the same way with the minutes, the agenda, any legislation that I go to the site and change. The only thing that I have the ability to change without approval, I think, is like public hearings, maybe. But it has to be approved by our administrative assistant. So
Was that request sent to us?
it was.
No. So
Actually,
fortunately
yes.
for me, our website has what's called an activity log. So everything that happens on the website is logged in the activity log. I can see that for the January 2nd meeting, the agenda was sent to me at 7:40 a.m. on January 2nd, and I approved it at 11:10 a.m. on January 2nd. There was no agenda sent to the website for this meeting today.
Well, there actually was. I don't know what your activity is, but
It's the website. It
Well,
tells you.
good for you. But I'm telling you, I did it just like I normally do.
You might have
And I
missed a
sent
step.
it, and, it's not like you haven't not approved them in the past for
Actually,
days and days
I
and
went
days.
back through the entire activity log until August because I noticed in the last council meeting you made a comment about how I'm not approving it at times in a timely fashion. And I have these activity logs printed out in PDF format if any council member would like them. 89% of all requests that have been sent to me have been approved within 1 day. 71% of all requests since August have been approved within an hour. 42% have been approved within 10 minutes of being sent to me. Any request that took longer than 2 days was because it came in on a Friday and I approved it on a Monday. There's never been a single occasion where it took a week, as you mentioned in the last meeting.
Well, I
And we
think you're
have the
wrong.
activity logs. This is data logged from the website that tells you when everything happens. This is not my opinion.
Well, I can tell you that with these specific ordinances that I mentioned the last time, on my end, it showed that I sent you we received them, what was it, the Monday before the meeting. I tried to post them, and they weren't approved until after that meeting. It
The
was like a
December
week
3rd
later.
council meeting was sent to me at 2:16 PM and it was approved at 2:17 PM.
Then something's wrong with the site because they never uploaded. They didn't upload until after we had had that meeting. So, but here's the kicker. Why do we have to have your approval anyways? When you brought this website,
just a
hold on, let me
procedural
finish,
thing.
please.
Okay,
Don't
go ahead, sorry.
overtalk me.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
When you guys brought this city website to us, you said that council would have an independent site that we would run, and we don't. Everything has to go through you. So, you can give your statistics and whatever, but the point is, we should be able to go on there as council and make our own updates, make our own changes without you having to approve it.
Yes, I would love for us to get to that point.
We are to that point.
What we had discussed was that you would learn the operations of the website, and when that was successful, you would have full access to the website. However, that has still not been successful. No signed legislation has been updated by you to the website since August. That's a procedural step that has been consistently missed. There have been numerous date typos. There have been numerous things that I've had to come back and say, hey, this isn't correct. So I was waiting until the procedure and everything was absolutely correct before handing it over and stepping away and having no other eyes on it.
Well, all I can say is, I know when I posted, I know when I sent you the request, and obviously our information is not correlating. Because like I said, I know when I post them. I've never had any trouble with posting before, but for these specific ordinances, there was more than a Friday to a Monday. So,
Maybe you and I could have a discussion after the meeting about, I mean,
I'm with you.
okay? And then that way, we can make sure the agenda gets put on the website for the public beforehand.
Mr. President, I would suggest you bring the clerk in that discussion too.
Yeah, yep, so.
Council President?
Yes.
Does this discussion cut into my 5
Nope.
minutes?
No, no.
I'm sorry, you're out.
You're 7 minutes over.
Sorry, you gotta sit down.
Okay. This is another matter. On July 18th of 2024, Resolution 154-24, a resolution increasing appropriations. The city has encountered more expenditures than normal removing trees. In my notes, I've got, I guess, $40,000 was appropriated for this tree thing. I guess the people in charge asked for $50,000 more, I guess, to finish out the year, okay? Then on November 21st, under the third reading, ordinance 186-24, an ordinance declaring the necessity for planting, maintaining, trimming, and removing shade trees in and along the streets of the City of London, estimating the cost thereof, and providing for the levy of special assessment, which at that time was passed. Does this levy of special assessment, was this on our tax or on our property tax receipt that we got today? At least I got mine, because it says under special assessments, London tree assessment, and there's a financial amount. Is this what this is referring to?
The November ordinance was the renewal of the special assessment for the trees. It was.
Okay, so.
It renews every 2 years.
Okay. My last question, does city council know how much they're going to spend or was appropriated to spend this year for planting, removing, and maintaining trees?
40,000.
40,000. Does that include, when you mention the word maintain, does that include fixing sidewalks where the tree roots have come up and either did the concrete or the bricks?
And I don't think so.
No, it does not.
And I think that's 40,000 spread over 2 years, if I'm recalling correctly.
I think the 40,000 is every year.
It's,
It's 40,000 every year.
is it a,
Can you tell me how much of that 40,000 goes towards removal of trees?
I think it just all depends on the year and what trees need removed or trimmed up or planted.
Okay.
The tree commission would meet and they would decide on that.
Yeah, I would say that every year is a little bit different, right? I remember one year, what were those that we had, the ash? John, what was that, ash? The ash borers or whatever, and we had to spend a ton of money, like almost the whole budget to take all those trees out. And then some years, we do a lot more planting of trees, and then there's the maintenance of trees. So every year it kind of differs. Sometimes, you know, it just depends. You know, people will call and say, hey, this tree's dead, or this tree, a big branch fell and we think it's dying and we got to go out and take a peek at it. And if it's one of those big, gigantic old trees, it's pretty expensive to get one of those cut down and taken out.
We checked a lot of old trees last year and took them out because of all the storms and things, we wouldn't have problems.
Does the
They look
street-
good on the outside, but the inside was bad, and we had them removed.
Does the street department take care of that, or do they hire an outside contractor to take care of removal of trees within the city of London?
So, if we can do it in-house, we do it in-house, right? But a lot of that we cannot handle, especially those big, large trees. We're not equipped to take down, they're not trained to take down those big, large trees. And then a big portion of it too is also stump grinding, which
And
we
those
hire,
big
we
ones,
hire an
they're
outside company
$500-600.
to come in and
more.
stump grind, so.
Does the street department get bids when they hire an outside contractor to come in and take down a tree, or do they just pick one?
Depends on the amount. Probably
Normally,
depends on the amount.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
amount.
If it hits an amount, we have to, but we do speak to all the local guys and kind of say, hey, what's this going to cost? What's that going to cost? Especially if it's not, hey, this needs to come down now. Now, sometimes those trees, a big branch will come off of it and you can see that it's hollow inside.
Sure.
And we just kind of pick one or who's available or who can do it the fastest and get it in and get it done. But yeah, we've spoken to all the local guys
Okay.
since I've been here. We'll reach out for especially the bigger jobs.
Yeah. I got one last question, if I may. Who decides on the planting of trees and where?
The tree commission.
Is there a president of this tree commission?
Well, there's 2 members up there, I think.
Yes, John is the chairman, and I'm on that committee also.
Okay,
Yep.
And then Bill's on that committee also.
okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, and they meet monthly also. They was supposed to meet monthly if they have to. They're not meeting right now. There ain't too many trees they need to plant right now, but
I understand that.
yeah,
Okay.
okay, on to committee reports. Greg?
Finance Committee has not met since our last meeting. We will meet on Tuesday, January 21st, 5:30 PM next door in the conference room.
You, Brent?
Yeah, I attended on the 14th, the public service and the public safety. And I have the fire chiefs from the public safety here. We had departmental EMS training, adult and pediatric drug calculations through Ohio Health. Departmental EMS training, overdose clusters through Madison Health. Departmental fire training, weather-related incidents. Hosted several students for ride time for tolls and grant paramedic classes. Completed annual tool drive. And then for the public service, I have the winter basketball. Final regular season games are this Sunday, the 19th. Spring volleyball registration is open. Deadline to register for that is February 23rd. The dog waste stations, locations for stations have been picked out. Cowling Park will get 4 additional stations. City Hall will have 2 stations. And Merrimack Park will get 2 stations. And they'll still have 2 in reserve for later. The pole had a mini split installed in concessions. There have been a lot of repairs to the flooring. And opening day is slated for Saturday, May 24th. There should be getting a new plow here soon for the Gator. And the adult programs, they have cornhole leagues. League details will be released once they determine if noise levels allow league play to still happen while conference room is in use. And they have ballroom dancing lessons. 2 classes have been scheduled. Monday, January 27th from 1 to 2, and Monday, February 3rd from 6 to 7. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Rich?
January 14th, we had Public Safety Service Committee meeting. The minutes of the December 10th meeting were approved as written. Chief Nickel gave his report, and Mr. Stahl will present that to council momentarily. Chief Eads gave his report. You just heard that from Mr. McDaniel. We want to remind all citizens of London that it pertains to, please clear all the snow away from any fire hydrants that is close to your home or property. Please take a few minutes to ensure the fire hydrants close to you are accessible if needed, and we thank you for that. Under Safety Service Director, we'd like to reintroduce some legislation from last year to have the ability to apply for grants. This legislation was originally set up to alleviate short notices on grants that become available. This legislation will be forthcoming at our next council meeting. I believe Mr. McDaniels is going to sponsor it. Property owners who didn't mow and the city had to have it done, we currently have outstanding balances of $3,300 that are due. There are 2 properties that have been sold that we can't collect on. We'd like to access the fees to those property taxes. There was a motion to send this to council on a 3-0 vote. Mr. Stahl will be sponsoring it. We'll be asking for emergency legislation on it. I have some other business here. Chief Nickel was at our meeting, and he did talk about central dispatching. As noted in the upcoming report, we did lose a dispatcher. We currently have 3. Chief Nickel is asking that we'd like to send this to the county to take over 8 shifts a week. They're all midnight shifts, and it'd be 1-day shift for full coverage. There was a motion to send this to the Finance Committee. Motion was approved 3-0. Also, previous talks for central dispatching prorated at $122,000 a year through 2027. After 2027, there's no charges afterward. Still waiting on a quote from Motorola. There's a rough estimate of about $350,000 for new equipment for dispatching in the new police station. Under new business, all city vehicles will have cameras and GPSs installed for better and accurate accountability. We also talked about more streetlights being placed along Lafayette Street and East High Street as you are coming into the city. These areas, they're very dark, and they need some streetlights there. Under new business, we had none. We adjourned at 6:35. Next safety service meeting will take place on February 11th at 6 p.m. in the conference room. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy?
Yeah, I attended the Public Service Committee meeting this past Tuesday, and we talked about the need for a community center. A lot of the kids are having to practice pretty late on school nights, and so we discussed trying to move forward with a community center if possible and how to go about doing that. We also talked about sanitation department. Dan LaValle is going to act as sanitation superintendent temporarily in the current superintendent's absence. We talked about possibly stopping recycling because of the cost and overtime involved and wear and tear on vehicles. We talked about reducing curbside assistance unless a person is physically disabled. Talked about reducing the free bulk pickup amounts to reduce costs, and talked about yard waste issues of those yard waste getting dumped at the site without being ticketed. We also talked about the sidewalk legislation came up and kind of what the process is if we decide to purchase this sidewalk grading system. There's a question of if a place doesn't have a sidewalk? Will it be required to put in a sidewalk? Those kind of questions. We talked about event legislation that's coming forward the next meeting to kind of standardize events as far as the number of events that can happen, the distance from curbs or distance from the tracks or where stages can be set up, that kind of thing. Bill brought up that ODOT's requirements are changing, so that's going to increase costs for paving or handicap access to sidewalks, so that may require some appropriations later on. And we also talked about the right-of-way permits fees for outside companies coming in and working in the right-of-ways. And then Mr. Norman's going to present a report from the street department. And the next meeting is February 11th, 5 p.m. in the meeting room next door.
Thank you. Shannon?
Finance Committee meets next week.
John?
Public Safety Committee briefing from January 14th, 2025. Officer Ryan Davis was promoted sergeant on December 29th. They secured a 2024 Tahoe PPV with Tim Lally Chevrolet with 2024 capital funding and will be scheduling upfitting. It is expected that the equipment and upfitting will not take place until later than the spring. Officer Jacob Johnston was sworn in after completing the basic academy and passing the state certification examination. He was selected as class speaker and also the top driver for the class. Dispatcher Jeannie Porter resigned her position as dispatcher effective January 31. She obtained a dispatcher position with the Madison County Sheriff's Office. All officers met the 2024 continuing professional training requirement set by OPATA for the 24 hours of required training. Officer Denise Dye successfully completed her field training phase and is on solo patrol. We have one open officer position and are currently conducting a hiring process to fill the vacancy. There have been several warnings and 21 citations issued for driving on a closed road at the road construction site on West Center at Main Street since it closed a week ago. There were 30 traffic stops completed on North Main Street since November 2024, 9 sites. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Michael?
I have a question. The lady the dispatcher that's going to the sheriff's office, is that the one who actually came to our meeting and was concerned about?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. I was worried about her. I have the street department report. First of all, Mr. Supervisor, Department Head Long said that he wanted to thank his department for doing a good job with the snow events. And I agree with that. They did some plowing and salting, repaired some equipment, working with the trash department. They're loaning their people out to the trash department because we have a shortage there. Looks like they took some of the Christmas lights down. I'm sure they're very busy because I live over on Oak Street, right around all that chaos. That's the best word I can use, chaos that's going on over there. So I'm sure that's keeping them quite busy. And as usual, a page and a half of how busy they are. Our street department is, they're busy and they work hard. So that's really all I have.
All right, thank you. On to city official reports.
All right, good evening. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. Just to reiterate what was just talked about, I want to start off by thanking all of our departments for their hard work, especially during these snowstorms and cold temperatures. Trash was out there, sanitation was out there running, police, fire. I mean, everybody's out there doing their thing. I know there's been a lot of questions about snow and snow plowing and salting, but before I get to that, I do want to thank the London Street Department for their hard work clearing our streets. First thing is I'll talk about the order in which roads are plowed. First is the main roads. Those are the state routes. Then we move on to the connectors. Those are the roads that connect the main roads. Then we finally get to work our way into residential. We start off with the most populated areas that are also semi-connectors, and move down to the less populated roads. On January 5th, we were out treating roads at 4 p.m. before the snow came and started plowing the main roads and connectors immediately. We had 3 to 4 trucks going at all times with a staff working 12-hour shifts. They worked 24 hours a day for a couple days. On January 6th, they started to get into the residential area in the early afternoon. They then did the same thing when the second round of snow came. Every year we hear concerns about salting residential roads. To my knowledge, the City of London has never salted residential roads. We will salt some intersections and residential areas, but not the full residential roads. This has been a practice of the city for at least 40 years, as well as many other municipalities like Columbus and Hilliard. This was also brought up in the past at city council meetings. When that was brought up a few years ago, calculations was done on how much it would cost to salt all these residential roads, and it was quite immense. At that point, council did not proceed forward with the funding for extra salt. Please note that we have 99 lane miles of road within the City of London. I know that sometimes other local communities are brought up about how they're salting their residential roads. Some of these areas do not plow or salt state routes like 40, 142, or 29, which is a lot of their roads. ODOT and their crews do those state routes. So all they have to do as an entity is the residential roads. That means they only have to focus on residential streets, as the City of London has to maintain all the roads within the city, including our state routes. You can imagine that if you looked at how many feet of road that we have to plow and salt compared to the City of London, it would be a lot less. I understand that it may make travel a bit difficult on these residential roads, but it seems like people are taking their time and not getting in a hurry. We checked our CAD system for crashes between 1/6/25 through 1/15/25, including property damage, hit skips, non-injury, injury, fatal crashes, and the only one that was found was not on a major road was 1/12/25 at Liberty and Maple, and it was an injury crash. Nothing found in the actual residential neighborhoods. Once again, I would like to thank our street department for all their hard work and the great job that they did. And it looks like they may have to do again here soon. At the Public Service Committee, this was brought up. There was discussion about Resolution 10225, which is the $50,000 funding for the street scan to come grade our sidewalks. The discussion was about what the next step would be after getting sidewalks graded. I think spending the money to have sidewalks graded and not having a plan on what would be done with that information is a bit short-sighted. I believe this legislation should be the final step after City Council figures out what they want to do with that information. I would suggest that City Council put into place what their step will be to repair or replace sidewalks and then pay to have the sidewalks graded. I would hate to spend tax dollar money on an assessment and that information not be acted on because there's not a plan in place when we move forward. And if somebody has a plan, please let me know. The stormwater project on Center Street is underway. I know that is a big inconvenience for citizens, but I ask that they also be patient with that. This project is vital to the drainage in London, and when it is completed, it will really help out all of London. We're continuing to work on the comprehensive plan and have a meeting set up at the end of the month. At the upcoming meeting, we will be going over the initial draft goals and objectives for the plan. We will also be confirming the concepts and proposals for the focus areas. I have contacted our Mid-Ohio Water and Sewer District board members about coming into City Council to do a brief presentation on what the board has been up to. They are looking at their schedule. They're busy like everybody else at the beginning of the year, but they said that they will come in. We're hoping sometime in February we'll have them in here and they can answer some questions and kind of go over what's been going on with Mid-Ohio. The new police station project is coming along. Our team will be presenting tomorrow to receive our bond rating. After this step is completed, we will market the bonds to investors and hope to close and fund the bonds in late February. We have also been meeting regularly with the USDA as well as our architect. The final drawings are 50% complete and they look great. We hope to start moving dirt sometime in the summer. I would like to welcome Officer Johnson to the London Police Department. I had the honor of swearing in our newest officer this past Tuesday. I would like to welcome him to the City of London and wish him nothing but safety and the best of luck. We have been having more and more meetings about development. We have a multinational chain looking to locate a store here in town. I'm really hoping to be able to release that information real soon. We also met with a developer about a senior-style condos that would be for sale and could possibly come with some retail on the outlots. Once again, I think this is a very exciting year for the City of London as we start to see these things come in and start to see that little bit of growth. I had the opportunity to read to preschoolers at Fairhaven last week, and it was a very enjoyable time, but next time I need to remember to take a couple books because reading the same book over and over 10 times will kind of get to you after a while. Next meeting, I hope to present the State of the City address at the February 6th meeting is what I'm hoping. I'm working on compiling all the data and information to talk about how successful 2024 was and our goals for 2025. Now move on to the fun fact, which is number 500. That is the amount of money that we were able to raise and that was donated to Shoe Sensation for the Mayor's Day sale. This money will be used to purchase new shoes for the London City Schools Raider Rack. The Raider Rack supplies new clothing, shoes, and miscellaneous items to those students who are in need. I'm glad I was able to help support this great cause, and I'd like to thank Shoe Sensation for their partnership and everyone who came out for the sale. Thank you very much.
Greg?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a few questions, please? Just as clarification, earlier in your discussion, you said that the snow plows went out on January 5th, early morning, and then the next afternoon they hit the residential hours, so it was, just to clarify, it was over 24 hours?
I said on January 5th, they were out treating roads at 4 o'clock. That storm didn't come in until, 6 is when that storm came in. PM is, I should have said PM. So they were out there on January 5th, and then they started plowing the main roads and connectors. On January 6th, they were able to start getting in there. It was within 24 hours. They were able to start getting into, from when the first snow dropped, within 24 hours, we were in residential areas.
Okay, thank you. And then you mentioned that there had been some numbers generated a few years ago about salt. Do we know how much that was?
Bill, do you remember that number? I hate to say it, but I know $1 million got that tossed around, but what we would have to do is really sit down and figure out now with the current salt prices, what we're currently salting, how much we've used, what that cost is, and then times it by how many miles of road is left. I know some of you council members were in on those discussions.
Yeah, I think it was over $1 million. It was definitely over $1 million.
I'm thinking $1.3 million, if I remember correctly, or $1.5 million.
What's that?
Seems like weather was like cement, it's snow and ice.
I think Rich was there, yeah, Andy was there, because you got to remember, it's not just the salt either. It's going to be equipment, it's going to be manpower, it's going to be overtime, it's going to be a lot of things.
And at a certain point, maybe it's a 10-inch snow, maybe it's a 12-inch snow. I mean, I don't know. I know we have snow emergencies that go into effect at 2 inches? Or snow routes that?
Yes, snow routes.
Snow routes that go into effect under a snow emergency with 2 inches. And I don't know how we fix the problem in the residential areas. You feel bad that those guys are trying to drive around all those vehicles. I think some places have an odd-even system. Some cities do that. If you're on the odd side of the street, on an odd day, you park on the odd side of the street. On an even day, you park on the even side of the street. This at least gives your plows the opportunity to go through and get one whole side of the street in a day without having to go around vehicles like that. I don't know if there's a better solution. I don't know if there's a certain point, whether there's maybe we should consider, at 6 inches, 8 inches, whatever that number is, that maybe we enforce something else so that the plows can get to the streets in a better way. So I was just curious about that, just, that's a point for discussion for later. And then one other question I have, nothing to do with that part. There was a big announcement that Anduril Industries is building in Pickaway County, bringing 4,000 new jobs. I heard today on the radio that those average $132,000 a job down there. Did we have any discussions? Have we had any manufacturers that are looking at London right now? I mean, I think that's something, we hope it happens, but I don't know that we were even in that discussion.
I can tell you that Honeywell building, it looks like it's going to get filled. So we know that Honeywell left the old Intelligrated building, right? And it looks like we'll be bringing in, it's a cable manufacturing company out of Italy, and it looks like they will be taking that over. But yeah, we continue to have those discussions. David Kell and I meet at least once a month, and then have lunch like once a month and just kind of go over, some of the things that are looking in Central Ohio, some of the things that are looking here. But I know, as we talked about before, I think we have a lot better chance of starting to land some of those things with active developers than we did in the past when we had developers who weren't very active and the land sat stagnant. So, we're always looking. I bet there's a guy in the crowd that'd love to sell a bunch of acres out on the industrial parkway.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rex, do you have anything? Kenna? Jennifer? On to old business, up for fourth reading. Ordinance 207-24. Can I get a motion to read by title number?
So moved.
Second.
Ordinance 20724, ordinance creating 19 incentive districts and declaring improvements to certain real property within the incentive districts to be a public purpose and exempt from real property taxation, identifying certain public infrastructure improvements that once made will benefit or serve the parcels in the incentive districts, requiring the owners of those parcels to make service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing an incentive district public improvement tax increment equivalent fund for the deposit of such service payments, authorizing payments to the London City School District and Tolles Career and Technical Centers, and approving and authorizing the execution and delivery of a tax increment financing agreement with Tomcat LLC.
Okay, so I've spent some time reading through this. Wes or Paul, I don't know if you guys would entertain a couple questions about these various proposals. So the 207-24, first of all, this is the one that has now been rescheduled for public hearing on February 20th, 2025 to satisfy the notice requirements. Insofar as the 19 incentive residential, and this is the residential TIF under section 570940, the proposed duration of this is, well, it's a 100% valuation for the improvement over the base value over potentially 30 years from the commencement date. I guess my question is if you anticipate the repayment period extending to 30 years from the commencement date, or if there's, if you think that might be, if there's any possibility that it could be a shorter duration. Yeah, probably.
Sibilance. I know. Considering we only have 2 meetings a month.
So Councilwoman, that like, there's absolutely a chance that it will be, that the infrastructure costs will be covered prior to that 30-year period. The difficult thing at this point is not knowing what kind of infrastructure or what the costs are going to be. So for instance, one of the, this is a big swath of ground, which is why it's segmented it somewhat. But one of the things that we hope to do in the relative near future is extend Eagleton from 42 to 142. We don't have a single cost of what that's going to cost today to know where we have to cross the creek, what EPA requires, where there's going to be a bridge. There's just no idea what that will ultimately be. We would not probably do that in one simple project or single project. We'd probably take Eagleton partway, see what kind of development comes in. Councilman Eads asked about the project in Pickaway County. I could tell you lots about what is necessary to have the infrastructure ready. So they look for, if you read that announcement, they talked about having a site ready that they can move into right now because they have defense contracts that they need to immediately begin performing on and so forth. And so there are certain sites, that was at Rickenbacker, right? Like that there are certain sites that are turnkey and ready to go. London's got a long way to go where we get some infrastructure to make these connectors, kind of come through. So we don't have a crystal ball good enough to say we know absolutely everything that's going to come, but it's quite common that when you have a TIF and you've got a fixed amount of money, we're going to spend that money as judiciously as possible for obvious reasons because it comes out of this front pocket and I got to wait for repayment of those major infrastructure improvements that the city and the rest of the community benefits from. But I've got to wait a long time to get that repayment, right? So my point is I'm not going to spend money frivolously, and at the same time, it is not uncommon that money gets recouped, I'll just say in 18 years, and then council has full discretion of what is going to happen with those funds, right? Either that TIF goes away, you put it to a different project, you have lots of things that you can do at that point in time, but trying to recoup the main infrastructure is, it would be premature to try and establish how many dollars that would be because, just as a for instance, if a Target wants to come to town, they're going to need different things than if, that small Aldi's comes to town, right? Both are great, but there's going to be different infrastructure requirements on that front.
Okay. So in the first of the two TIFs, the payment obligation from the city, if I'm understanding this correctly, and please do correct me if I am not getting this right. The first tax year following improvements to the infrastructure that would collectively value at least $1 million would trigger the payment obligation. Am I correct in that?
So the way that works in each incentive district, once there is over $1 million worth of improvements within that district, that's when the revenues start getting collected by the TIF fund.
So since this particular TIF calls for 19 separate incentive districts, it would have to be a $19 million before?
No, each incentive district is on its own. Each incentive district stands by itself. So you have District 1. Once $1 million hits inside District 1, then the TIF revenue starts generating. Then you have District 2 by itself. Once $1 million of improvements happens within that district, then the TIF fund starts
And once
generating.
the revenue starts generating, the city's obligation to repay the cost of the infrastructure is also triggered, if I'm understanding that correctly.
Correct. And it's
Okay.
not necessarily, it's not the city's obligation, it's not city funds, it is real estate taxes that go into the
The
TIF fund.
Right.
Yes.
Of course,
Yeah, I
the
just want
city's
to clarify
charged with
that. Yeah,
with
it's
the
not-
collection and disbursement of those monies, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And before we move on, just like for an abundance of clarity, so like if you look at the land that is on the, London doesn't sit north, south, east, west very easy, so I'll get this wrong, but where the railroad tracks are by Staples, on the opposite side of that on Spring Valley Road, right? Like there may not be any activity there for 10 years. There may be activity because a manufacturer is looking and that site has got rail and it has something, right? So if there's no activity over there for 10 years, and that would mean it's a farm field and it continues to be a farm field and there's no improvements. And so there's, the TIF is just kind of sitting idle, if you will, from that standpoint, because there's no investment. If someone comes in and says, hey, we're going to build a $40 million factory and we're going to have 300 new jobs, that's why it's divvied up, because it's such a large piece of ground, right? You're talking about something just under 1,100 acres or so.
Okay, so since the first residential TIF does provide for those separate 19 incentive districts, and if those could, if I'm understanding correctly, could have different, I mean, obviously they're not all going to go under construction at the same time. Presumably then they're going to have different payment obligations triggered based on whether or not that $1 million threshold has been met per district.
And to give perspective on that $1 million threshold within those districts, for the residential TIF, I mean, you're talking about 2 to 3 houses
Well, I
within that
understand that,
district,
yeah.
right? That's when it would trigger in that district.
Sure. I'm just envisioning the, really the monetary, the bookkeeping aspect of that, of keeping all of those TIF payments separate and separate. I'm assuming they're going to have to be based on district to district, so we're going to have 19 separate TIF accounts, at least from this particular.
And that's something that our attorney will work with the county auditor to set those up so that they are very clean in those situations. Because the county auditor is the one that tracks those.
Can I interrupt for a moment with an additional question?
Yeah.
The $1 million that we're talking about, does that include your roads, your your sewer system, water?
It's
whether
$1 million in appraised value, so it's based upon the actual home value, or in this particular situation, because it's a residential TIF, it would be based upon home value.
Yeah,
so
your house isn't
not
going to
roads.
approve just because you have a road that goes to it. You know. Okay, so. You have here first tax year, and again, this is regarding the residential TIF. And then, so you have an alternate schedule of either hitting that assessed improved value of $1 million per district or tax year 2034. So that tells me that you would have, at least the eye, that you would have some kind of.
There's a time frame of when these improvements need to happen within that district. So at that certain time, it triggers. There's a certain time frame where improvements have to be done for that residential TIF.
Right, and so this would be if I'm reading this right, the earlier of, and so if you start with District A and by the time you get to District S, we've hit 2034, then that obligation for payment is going to have commenced regardless of whether it's met that $1 million threshold.
Correct.
Okay. Question with regard to the sufficiency of the funds coming in and the city's obligation to make those payments back to the developers. And would it be possible to have like a projection maybe, or an amortization schedule, or some assurance that the TIF funds themselves are going to have sufficient monies in order to make those recoupment payments?
So to be clear, and I've heard it a couple times, so I want to be, kind of abundantly clear. The city is not obligated to anything, right? Like, this is not indebtedness of the city to pay these funds. So, for instance, if I take that Eagleton Road and I go spend $10 million to move it from 42 to 142, there's a TIF put on there. That TIF is collected by the county at the time of taxation, but no one comes. So it's like that bridge in Alaska, the bridge to nowhere, right? Nobody comes, no development comes in, or there's one store and there's insufficient funds to pay the obligations, that are bonded or what have you. That means I don't get paid. That doesn't mean the city has a new obligation. You're not at risk for that. The only person at risk is the developer, in this case, that's me, right? So it is not putting the city's balance sheet, if you will, on the line in any way, shape, or form. So really, that's why it's such a no-brainer, right? Like, so the example I use, and I'll use the Johnson Creek one because that's the one closest to us and most before us. That particular area is, well, let me back up. There's 1,021 acres that we bought from MTB. That 1,021 acres collectively generated $35,000 in income tax per year. The city's portion of that income tax was $4,500. So you got $4,500 in collective revenue off of 1,021 acres into the city coffers. Just at Johnson's Creek, based on what it would take to be eligible to purchase the home there, the City of London in 1 year will get $2.1 million in income tax. That's on a couple hundred acres, not all 1,021. So the city will generate, as a result of us putting the infrastructure in, having the TIF to get an ultimate repayment for that, $2.1 million in income tax alone. And that's a very conservative number because it assumes that those incomes never go up with time. Okay? And in addition to that, as a result of, kind of the deal, if you will, for safety services, there's another $335,000 or $350,000 that goes to safety services. So you take 1,021 acres that generates $4,500 in income, and as a result of these tools, without any risk to the city, you are able to increase your revenue off of 200 of those acres to the point of nearly $2.5 million a year. So the real question is, what does it cost council not to move forward with this? And that may well be why MTB hasn't done anything, in the 30 years that they own that property. And if you look at the opportunity cost of what it's amounted to the city, it's been meaningful. But it is really important to note that the city's neck is not on the line. Your balance sheet isn't there. If the development doesn't come, Paul Gross doesn't get paid back for the infrastructure that I put in. The Eagleton is probably the easiest, clearest way of looking at it. Build the road, retailers don't come, businesses don't come, activity doesn't happen, I don't get paid back. Now, I'll tell you, I'm betting on the fact I get paid back, right? Like, I wouldn't do this if I felt like London wasn't prime in a beautiful community to court and attract new businesses, new jobs, new homes, new residents, things of that nature.
Going back to your question real quick, so we're on the same page. So when the revenue is collected by the county, the county then gives that revenue to the city, for the city, then it goes into a TIF fund.
Right.
The city is then required to pay out of that TIF fund
Right.
to reimburse for public infrastructure.
Yes.
I think that's what you're asking.
Yes. I guess maybe because some of the language in here indicates that notwithstanding the sufficiency of the amounts available in that TIF fund, the city may use monies remaining after fulfillment of their reimbursement obligation. It doesn't make sense to me where those monies, if there's insufficient funds, where those monies are supposed to come from, based on mathematics, but.
Well, one thing, and I'm not looking at the language, Ms. Trainer, but if you have 19 districts, and let's say District 1, just to keep it simple, meets all of its obligations, and there's funds being generated from it, but District TIF 2 doesn't meet its obligations, you could elect to use those funds from 1 to pay the obligations of 2 to make sure that those funds are there. I know that's commonly done, and it kind of goes back to, is it possible that the obligations are met in less than 30 years, which is absolutely possible.
Okay. Look, and then this might just be a transferring error, but if I understand you, from our previous conversation, that the commencement for all of these projects was to be by 2034 or earlier.
Correct.
And then the public infrastructure improvements will be constructed by the company with timing that is determined in the company's sole discretion in any case not later than December 31st of 2044, which is a 10-year difference from where it's stated earlier in this document. I'm wondering if that's
That might be
just a typographical error.
Yeah, I'll check with double check with our attorney on that one.
Yeah. Second, or next question I have was with regard to the company's collection of interest on the reimbursement payments that are going to accrue interest. And you've got a schedule here of basically how that interest rate is to be calculated. And for this residential TIF, you have that the interest should be calculated at the higher rate of either 8%, or if a governmental issuer has issued revenue bonds secured with the reimbursement obligation, the rate of interest on those revenue bonds. Just a quick Google search indicated that revenue bonds, and I'm assuming we're going with either a 25-year revenue bond, since that would be the most appropriate based on the duration of this, potential duration of this TIF. That rate is currently 4.45%. A historical review of revenue bonds lifetime, they had a maximum, I think, in the early 80s of 15%. I don't think we're likely to see rates like that again, hopefully not. But it seems to me that given the alternatives here of either 8% or the rate underneath the reimbursement of the revenue bonds, it's likely to be always 8% as opposed to the alternative of the what would be now 4.45%. Just a quick review of other municipalities that have approved residential TIF agreements. They, and just in their agreements, they didn't have this sort of alternative structure, but rather just stated a fixed percentage, which wasn't nearly as high as 8%. Both Pataskala and Summit County TIFs were set at 5%. And I guess my question to you as the developers is if that's something that we might be able to negotiate.
So I think the problem is, you just mentioned the bond for the police department a minute ago, right? The bond for the police department is going to be backed and secured by the credit rating of the City of London, right? The City of London's well-established, and it's got a bond rating because it's got operations, it's got tax revenues, it's got all of these things, right? And I also mentioned that the city's not going to be on the hook for this. So it's not the city's bond rating that is going to allow this money to go out and be bonded, right? So if you take that money to the market, which obviously when you're doing business, I mean, I'm very frugal. I go out and I try to get money borrowed for as least amount of money as possible. But you have to first have something, right? So there's an old saying that if I had some ham, I'd have some ham and eggs if I had some eggs, right? And the point is, when we first put this infrastructure in, and we try to go out and get a bond, but we're not using the city's credit worthiness, there's not going to be anybody who wants to buy those bonds, right? So that's just the reality of it, because there's no tax revenue there. It's an empty farm field when it starts. So when you go out and bond something like that, you got to buy someone that'll buy the bonds, right? Someone that'll issue you the debt. So because the infrastructure isn't there, because they're farm fields, because it's not using the city's credit rating, you've got to say, okay, I've got to look at what the current market is for money, right? So I borrow money from Farm Credit, I borrow money from the Savings Bank, I borrow money from Telhio. My average rate that I'm borrowing money for today is 8.7, 8.8%, right? So it would make no sense to have a rate that is lower than what it costs to borrow the capital, right? So I can't tell you where rates will be a year from now or 2 years from now, but at some point in time, there will be houses built, there will be buildings built, there will be a tax base there. Once that tax base there, people will buy the bonds. People won't say, hey, Gross believes in this, and so I'm going to give him the money, and if I don't get paid back, I don't get paid back, right? So right now, we're starting from sort of an infantile state, and as a result of that, I've got to look at the cost of capital in the market today. And if anyone wants to check this, try this, go talk to your local bank, talk to any bank, right? See if you can borrow money cheaper than 8% today. You can't. There's there's been an inverse action between the 10-year and the 2-year. The Federal Reserve used to be able to control the 30-year bonding of the markets. All of that's broken today, right? It's all broken ever since they tried to tame inflation. And the 10-year is trading way different than the Fed funds rate today. So the 10-year is trading at about 4.7%. So if you look at a 30-year mortgage, it's north of 7%, and that's on a home which has got all kinds of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and all kinds of government backers. So we're really at the mercy of the fact that we're going into a farm field that has really no tax basis that can support the bonding of this. So we have to carry the capital at what commercial banks are charging today. So listen, I'd welcome that at 3%, right? Because it just gets me my money back sooner. But right now, we're not in a position where we have any control over that.
Follow-up to that is you've got the residential TIF and then the other one for the farm ground that we're talking about between 42 and 142. In your various proposals, for the residential TIF, you're proposing an interest rate of 8% per year, or the alternative is the reimbursement rate for of the revenue bond. For the other TIF, your proposal is 8.99% per year. Similar with the rate of interest paid on a revenue bond. Or thirdly, the most recent annual rate of interest announced by the bond buyer, 25 bond revenue bond index plus 300 basis points. Is there some difference in risk to you to have a point percentage difference between the residential TIF and I'll call it the non-residential TIF insofar as the interest rate?
Well, I think there is a difference in risk. That all of them should have been at 8.99% because that's where our findings came back from the banks. But that's, there's lots of documents here, so I trust what you're reading is correct. But they all should have been at 8.99. But yes, the residential has less risk with it because we're seeing residential homes in London sell, right? Like we don't, like there's at the corner of 42 and 29, they built a big warehouse near AgPro, right? And that warehouse has been empty for 2 years since they built it. They can't find a tenant for it. Now they will, but imagine if you're a lender on that and you don't have any revenue to manage cash flow, right? Like, so commercial is very different than residential. I'm not saying one's better or worse, but the one thing that we know for sure with residential, whether they sell 4 homes a month or 6 homes a month, they're going to be selling homes each month, right? And so at the end of the day, that's generating revenue to start contributing to this. And again, the big difference between looking at standard bonding when you're looking at the macro market and something here where you have no credit worthiness and you have no revenue base, you can't look at those standard instruments because we're not pledging the city's capital. We're taking a barren farm field and going out and trying to do something with it to make something happen, right? And so at the end of the day, if I had a crystal ball or I had to give a hypothetical, I'd say, okay, on the front end, when all the risk is heavy, I'm going to have to find a commercial lender that will agree with this. I'm going to have to go out and make this happen by hook or by crook, right? And then when there's 100 homes built, and then you've got a tax base of 100 homes times $500,000 a home, now you've got a tax base, and you can go out and say, hey, would you bond this? Would you buy this debt? Because now we've proven that we've got the homes there, and they're on the tax rolls and things of that nature, and you've got a better basis from which you can go and argue. It's sort of like being a first-time business owner or entrepreneur and going to the bank and saying, hey, I'd like to borrow money. I got a great business plan. The banks don't laugh, but they don't give you a loan, right? Like they just say, you're going to have to find that some other way. Once your business is up and running and you got cash flow and you got profits, then you can go to a bank and you can say, hey, listen, I need $1 million. And they'll say, well, how about if we lend you $2 million? Because they're like comfortable with your cash flow. That's where we're at in this infantile state. So we're looking at the reality that we can't, as a practical matter, find a bondholder, right? I haven't looked. I wouldn't know where to look, because I know that without any revenue, no bondholder is going to be comfortable that they're going to get paid back, right? You've got to demonstrate that you've actually done something, you've built something, that you have a source of revenue, and then you can look at bonding that. And that's why both of those were contemplated in this. Like, hey, here's where we're at when we have a concept, when we're going in with an idea, and then later on down the road, you look at it from a standpoint of, okay, now we're going to get participants in this. When we get participants in it, we'll never be able to borrow as cheap as London, because London is a formal municipality, and you've got a credit rating, and you've got 200 years worth of history of, being around, right? Like this is not going to have those same benefits.
So once there's structures that are putting funding into those TIF funds, and there are reimbursement payments due to the company, with regard to the residential TIF, obviously the schools will get paid first. They'll be held harmless as to any value of improvements. And then 100% of, the next schedule of payment would be to reimburse the company for all accrued and unpaid interest until that has been paid in full. Is it possible that once this project gets maybe a little bit more firm insofar as its projections and deadlines, that we could see a projection or an amortization schedule about how these, what we don't want to be caught in a position of having that TIF fund not being able to make even an interest payment to the developer, and then having the next payment due, and it's still only applying to interest and not attacking whatever the principal is.
Yes, and yes. So I don't want to see that scenario either, because the only person that gets hurt in that scenario is me, right? Like, so I'm not, there's a song out there that says, you're worried about the back rent, you're worried about the front rent, you should be worried about the back rent, right? Like that's kind of what you're explaining here. But the only person that gets hurt in that scenario is me as the developer, right? So again, that's where the risk is being borne. If there aren't funds to pay it, then I'm out. And again, that ties to why people won't bond it, right? Like these things all kind of intersect as to why that is. Yes, we can give even some projections right now, because we're giving you projections based on like who's going to be buying these homes. So for instance, D.R. Horton is doing the development that's underway today, right? So we're moving dirt, we're moving topsoil, we've got some of that. They're going to take 49 homes to start with, 49 lots to start with. They're going to build 49 homes, okay? So you'll see that happen. You'll see that happen very quick. Their average home will sell for $450,000. We know that because that's what their product sells for, okay? Now, we can speculate how many homes they're going to sell in a month, 3 or 4 or 6 or 10, right? Like that's going to be the speculative part. But make no doubt about it, they're going to sell 49 homes because they're going to build these homes before they sell them, right? Like their model is different than most home builders. They're going to build them. Now, what we can do from that point is that we can extrapolate what does it take in terms of income, household annual income, to be able to buy a $450,000 home. And we know the answer to that. The answer to that is $150,000. So it's around 35% of your household income is what it's going to take to get into that home, or they won't get approved by their bank, right? So banks have rules that will dictate who can get into that we can take that $150,000 average household income, we can extrapolate that and say there's going to be 49 new people living in London that make $150,000, and that's what's going to drive your income tax number. We can take the 49 homes and we can say that's going to be at $450,000, and that is going to mean that we're going to have X amount of dollars worth of new property value in the community. And so we can get you that kind of estimate for something that's really close in front of us. Now, if I use that same piece of ground that's on Spring Valley Road, the other side of Staples by the railroad tracks, it's a farm field. I don't have a single person that's expressed interest in that except for a farmer that wanted to buy it to put their own beans and corn there because they didn't want to see it become a factory or a warehouse. So I can't give you anything that's, sort of that far out. So we've got to sort of crawl before we can walk because otherwise it's just bluster from us. But like with respect to Johnson's Creek, we can give you a pretty good indication. Now I can tell you Johnson Creek, as we've got that design, will take probably 7 years to build out entirely, right? Because you're going to use that same model, 3 homes a year, 5 homes a year, 6 homes a year, 1 home a year. I'm sorry, I mean a month. I misspoke. But, those models can get broken too, like we saw in 2008 when the market implodes. And if the market implodes like we saw in 2008, guess who's the loser here? Paul Gross, right? So it's hard to believe that I'm a victim, okay? But in fact, that's where all the risk is in this. Now, if it goes smashingly, I'll make a lot of money, right? Like, there's no question about that. But there's a lot more risk in it than anyone really fully appreciates because you're going to put $4 million worth of roads in before you sell 1 house, right? That's the whole thing. And if you look at spending $4 million in roads before you sell 1 house, that's a pretty daunting proposal, right? Because the house costs money to build. It's why you don't see ambitious plans every day.
So we've got, I probably have an appointment scheduled for Monday to consult with somebody that's way more well-versed in these kinds of agreements. But thank you for answering my questions. We'll probably reach out to your council if we have anything else that we would like to, banter back and forth for a little bit.
Thank you all very much. I know it's complicated. It's complicated for me. There's a lot to digest and unpack and so forth. But, when you're talking to that outside counsel, talk to them a little bit about, hey, hypothetically, how could this person get a bond on this before anything, before there's any there, right? Like that's one of the things that maybe I'll learn there's a path that I don't know about and haven't experienced or what have you. So, okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Does anybody else have any questions on this one? Okay, on to ordinance 208-24. Again, motion to read by title and number.
So moved.
Second.
Ordinance 20824, authorizing the City of London, Ohio to accept title in certain real property located within the city and immediately transfer title back to the current owner for the purpose of implementing tax increment financing pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Sections 5709.41 and dispensing with the requirement that the resolution must be read on 3 different days pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 731.17A.
This is the statutory requirement with regard to the non-residential TIF under 570941. The city had to have been the prior owner of the properties, so this is fulfilling that statutory requirement. Do we want to leave this one on with the other one? Yes.
I would.
On to ordinance 209-24. Motion to read by title number.
So moved.
Second.
Ordinance 20924, declaring the improvement of certain real property located in the City of London, Madison County, Ohio, to be a public purpose pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 5709.41, declaring such property to be exempt from real property taxation, designating improvements that once made will directly benefit the parcels for which improvements is declared to be a public purpose, requiring annual service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing an urban redevelopment tax increment equivalent fund, authorizing the execution of a tax increment financing TIF agreement and providing related authorizations pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Sections 5079.41, .42, .43, .832, and 85.
Okay, so most of my questions with regard to the residential TIF are gonna have application here in the non-residential TIF with a couple exceptions, and Wes, maybe you're the one in the hot seat now. I understand that the TIF has to follow what the current zoning is for these parcels. So this one, because it is not currently residential, couldn't be a residential TIF, if that, am I right in that?
So you're talking about the commercial TIF now, correct?
Yeah, this is the 570941 TIF, right?
Correct. So it's going to, the parcels now are zoned PUD, and I think there's some B2 and some manufacturing in those areas.
Yes. But you do have, just in your recitals, at least the, you have potential to establish mixed-use development for commercial and public, including but not limited to office, retail, multifamily, residential, and other commercial or mixed-use property. I guess my question was with regard to the multifamily.
So when you have parcels like the PUD, for example, if you have, so multifamily is considered when it's 4 units or larger and it's for rent, it is considered commercially taxed, a commercial tax base.
Okay.
So that's why it's underneath the commercial TIF in that situation.
My next question was regard to one of the recitals insofar as the London City Schools and whether or not they have been approached with passing a resolution to essentially approve the exemption from the improvements that would go to the.
So that would be part of the notices that go out as part of the TIF.
Well, this indicates that they have to have passed a resolution. The Board of Education of the City of London Schools has to pass a resolution in order to waive their right to receive compensation under that.
Correct.
Okay. And then, was that, I think most of my other questions were similar to the other one with the exception of the different interest rate structure as in the non-residential TIF as opposed to the residential TIF. There was an intention to keep those tracking one another. There might need to be some amendments made. And well, if I had another question, it's not jumping out at me, so I'll leave it alone for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on 209? Okay. On to Resolution 210-24. I get a motion to read by title number.
So moved.
Second.
Resolution 21024, a resolution determining that a petition to establish the London Gateway New Community Authority is sufficient and complies with the requirements of sections 349.03 of the Ohio Revised Code in form and substance, setting the time and place for a hearing on the petition and authorizing the notice by publication of such hearing.
This proposed resolution, it would be the one that creates the New Community Authority, and that would, Wes confirm with me, would encompass both TIFs, the residential and the non-residential, for the entire 1,100 or such acres. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And once the TIF has satisfied its obligations insofar as reimbursement to the developer, what do you foresee insofar as the income stream from the authority to make up that difference, I suppose? Because we're anticipating both the TIF and the NCA payments at the outset, but the TIF is going to go away at some point in time.
Yeah, so basically, both of those mechanisms, well, there's three economic development tools, right? So each one of those 3 economic development tools will go side by side with each other, okay? And the goals for those economic development tools holistically is to pay off that public infrastructure at a quicker rate, right?
Mm-hmm.
That way, that public infrastructure is paid off.
then that money then starts going to the city for use for public infrastructure funds.
Okay.
So there has to be public infrastructure that backs that NCA, meaning once that public infrastructure is paid off, we can't just continue accepting that through that millage rate
Right.
and putting it in our pocket, if it makes sense. It strictly has to pay off that public infrastructure.
Once that infrastructure has been paid off, then would these properties then commence with normal property taxes?
So that would be something that would be decided by the NCA board that
Okay.
gets created, which the city is a part of that NCA board.
Okay.
So there's other things that the NCA board can decide to use those funds for, such as maintenance of roads within that jurisdiction. Other expenses that that board may decide are beneficial to be reimbursed for. So the board, which is made up of the city as well, can decide, hey, we need to go out and do X, Y, and Z improvement, and then that will benefit that district, and then can be reimbursed for those improvements, if that makes sense. Or maintenance of roads, or, other facilities, things of that nature.
That's only in that area, right?
So it has to benefit the district, right? So there's ways to work through that. It doesn't have to necessarily be in that district,
But it has the benefit.
it has to benefit that district.
And it's only the separate funding for whatever incremental costs associated, or that the NCA decides to pass on to its various property owners, that 20% of those costs will be diverted to the city.
Correct. So upfront, day one, $1 comes in from that from the NCA. 80% goes to reimburse for that public infrastructure, and then 20% goes to the city for the city to utilize how they see fit. Safety services, safety services is what we declared in the agreement. Yes.
In the NCA, the New Community Authority, it is the group that has the authority to issue bonds.
It does.
It has bonding authority as its own entity.
It does.
Okay.
But at this point in time, there's nothing to bond, right? So, but it would have the ability to eventually, once the revenue starts coming in.
I think our plans are to leave this one on with the other until, so we can have them heard as a group.
Yeah, I think it was going to be a holistic discussion.
Yep. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, on to third reading, ordinance 212-24. Can I get a motion to read by title number?
So moved.
Second.
Ordinance 21224, an ordinance amending section 660 of the codified ordinances.
I know. Took a while to get here, didn't it? Whew. So this one's fairly simple compared to all that. Basically, this is part of the plan for the sidewalk program that we're trying to get in place. This is like the first step. As it is right now, if you were to go to section 660, all it really says is that you have to keep your sidewalks in good repair. That's pretty much what it says. If you don't, we can come after you and make you fix them. What it doesn't tell you is what the standard is for that currently. This amendment will actually put in specifics of what our enforcement guy will be able to go out and be like, okay, here's the standard, you're deviated from it, there's what you need to fix. And that's pretty much, I mean, there really is not much more to it than that.
got a question. Say you have a property owner and we go after them to fix your streets. They fix them. Or let's say they don't fix them and we end up having to fix them. Let's say they skip out. Who's liable? City liable for that? I mean, is that going to go, it's going to go on somebody's property taxes?
Yeah, it's an assessment. Did you get the deadline?
Oh, I think this is the dead one. Can I
No,
just
we-
talk
I
loud?
can hear you. I can hear you.
Oh, can you hear me? Oh, okay. Oh, okay, I'm
It's
good.
working.
That's correct. It is, if we send them a bill and they don't pay it, then we would bring it to council. Council would approve the assessment to their property taxes, and then it would be collected on their property taxes. Property taxes are collected in arrears, so it would take some time for the city to recoup those funds, but we would be able to recoup them.
Okay, let's say they skip out. The streets are fixed, they don't pay.
Sidewalks,
Tax-
sidewalks.
Yeah.
What do you mean skip out? Do you mean they sell their property?
Yeah, because before they sell their property, you have to, you have to settle up, you have to settle up your taxes. So we have an assessment on there. Now, the question is, if they sell it before we assess them,
That's what I
I mean,
kind of
that's a
think.
possibility. That's probably a rarity, but that is a possibility if they sold their house before we assessed it. Could we assess their property? We probably still could. I don't know how fair that is to the person moving in afterwards, but council would have to vote to approve the assessment. So ultimately, that would be your decision.
We have two
Yeah, we lost.
Yeah,
That's kind of where this is,
yeah.
it's kind of where that's going at. I just want to make sure that other taxpayers don't get double billed some way, somehow
Right.
for any of this. Well, that's unfair.
The primary concern I have is that I do believe the sidewalks need fixed. I do believe it's a significant issue. I do know that there probably are homeowners within the city that have financial struggles, and it would be quite a hardship for us to send them a bill for $4,000 or $5,000 to fix their sidewalks. So, that's the consideration that I feel like the city probably needs to struggle with a little bit, as to what expectations do we have if we're just going to send people a bill that there are folks that aren't going to be able to pay that, and it would be a huge hardship on them to have it collected in property taxes the following year. So just a thought. I do believe that it's an important issue. I know we need to deal with it.
That's all I got.
Any other questions?
This is just in relation to definitions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the amendment.
Yeah.
So none being, I make a motion we amend, or we adopt. Sorry, we are amending by the adoption. I make a motion, we adopt. There we go.
Second.
Who was that?
Mr. Hitt,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Stahl,
No.
Mr. Eads,
Yes.
Mr. McDaniels,
Yes.
Mr. Norman,
Yes.
Ms. Trainer.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 212-24 is passed. On to second reading, resolution 101-25. Can I get a motion to read by title number?
So moved.
Second.
Resolution 101-25, resolution increasing appropriations. Council would like to purchase Civic Plus.
So Civic Plus for agenda and meeting management is what we're discussing at this point. I think it's pretty apparent, especially if anyone's had to do the minutes and go through a meeting and do all of this. It's quite a process to do that. We're hoping that if we buy a program such as this with Civic Plus, that it speeds the process up, makes it more consistent, is easier to use, and is easier to publish that information somewhere by a clerk's action, hopefully. So those are the discussions that we had with Civic Plus. There's lots of things it could do, but we're looking at a basic program At this point, the cost was $5,200, which includes the $1,000 for the setup. They are going to honor the discount of 10%, I believe it was, for this, because we already have the other Civic Plus program. We do have, I think everybody's probably seen the email from the executive assistant for the city, that she has input on this. I'm not sure why she needs to have input on this. This is a council decision. However, she is the person that will have to deal with this in some ways and getting on the website. I know she offered to give us a visual, offered at least in an email to do a visual outline, and possibly, I was going to ask maybe if she had a demonstration for the clerk on how she could, her suggestion was to use different programs than this. So she's not in favor of this program. And if you'd like to have her speak to this, please do, Mr. President.
Yeah, you don't mind, please?
It is on. Hi. Thank you. First off, I just want to make it abundantly clear that I fully support council clerk having all of the tools that they need to streamline their role and to make things as easy as possible. I've listened to all of the conversations and I understand what you are trying to accomplish. My input is that what you are trying to accomplish can be done with a program you're already paying for called Zoom, and then Adobe, which is just $25 a month. The Civic Plus program would be about $300-something a month. So currently, the way that this functions, legislation is gathered and sent to the clerk and to multiple other people on the same email. The clerk will take it, upload it, convert it to PDF sometimes, and compiles it into one document. That document, when it is ready, the clerk sends it to those who needs it. Then usually Mr. Norman will take that document and upload it to the website. If any changes are needed to this document, that process has to repeat. With the Civic Plus software that you were looking at, that process is the same. Legislation will be gathered, it'll be sent to the clerk and multiple other people on the same email. The clerk will take it, and instead of uploading it to, I believe, currently Adobe, but not our Adobe, it will be uploaded into Civic Plus, which will convert it to a PDF, compile it into a document. When that document is ready, the clerk will need to take that document from Civic Plus and send it to everybody who needs it, including Mr. Norman, who will then have to upload it to the website. If any additions are needed to this document, the whole process will repeat. With Adobe, legislation will be gathered, sent to the clerk and multiple other people. The clerk will take it, use Adobe to convert it to a PDF, compile it into one document. That document, when it is ready, is sent to everybody who needs it, including Mr. Norman, who then uploads it to the website. If any changes are needed to this document, that whole process will have to repeat. Adobe is $25 a month. Civic Plus will be $300 a month. They have the exact same process. The bonus, however, with Adobe, the clerk could live type on the agenda document while the meeting is going on. You do not have that ability with the Civic Plus software. The other thing is with Zoom that you are currently paying for. If you've had a meeting in this room next to us, you understand how that functions. You have the meeting and it spits out a transcript. That could be utilized as your meeting minutes. Civic Plus does not have anything that will help you compile or translate or have a transcript for your meeting minutes. You'd still have to type them separately in a separate document and put them into Civic Plus, and then also separately send it to whomever needs to upload it to the website and then have it uploaded to the website. So I understand what you're wanting to accomplish, and I am all on board with it as well. I just am aware that there might be some other solutions we did not consider that do the exact same thing but are more cost effective. That's all.
Okay, so thank you for that. So our clerk had also emailed council members with some thoughts and opinions. He also said, he's willing to do whatever council's wishes are. Would you like to address that at all, Mr. Clerk?
I just want to make sure everyone had the videos that we saw. Just obviously, do not own the program now, so I don't know. Obviously, I think Ms. Breedlove has done a lot of research as well, so whatever the council wishes to do, I'm good with.
So in one of your comments in your emails that you wanted, and we're going to ask if there's going to be a comparison with Adobe and Zoom, will it simplify the voting procedures, record motions, and automatically place those minutes without a continual copy and paste, which was one of the things that you felt was a benefit to the Civic Plus program. Is the other program going to be able to do the same thing seamlessly?
I'm a little confused because the Civic Plus program will not automatically have minutes in it. And you seem to be referencing that it would. Civic Plus does not have a transcript feature. It will not
So
give you
in the
minutes.
Civic Plus videos that were sent, so that's where I'm getting this information from, in the one section about meeting minutes, it takes your agenda. and
Yes,
it
that's an
has-
add-on software feature. That's not part of your package. They do have a lot of really wonderful add-ons, but a lot of those add-ons also require you to have a Civic Plus website. So I met with Civic Plus on October, about this specific software, on October 3rd, again on November 13th, and again on November 14th to discuss this very specific software with all of my questions, with my knowledge of website integration and capabilities of Zoom and Adobe and things like that. So the meeting minutes part is an add-on. Optional enhancements, the meeting hub, the auto import, the meeting bodies, the custom meeting agenda, custom item approval workflow. And this is kind of the problem with some of those videos that they send out, is that they're not tailored to your exact specific need. So you think that you will be getting a lot of the features that you're not. But those are optional enhancements to the program that require you to have a Civic Plus website to function correctly.
Which brings to the question, my question is my question is, in your research, did you find out the prices of what those add-ons would be? Or did,
Well, they don't function without a Civic Plus website.
okay, that wasn't my question.
No, I
When-
didn't, because we
okay,
can't
thank you.
use them.
That's the answer. All right, so the question is, at this point, we've got a clerk, the system that we have is obviously flawed. We see that because we just went over that earlier today. If we did have to get a Civic Plus website just for council, the cost of it, I know you're like, oh, it's a lot, but when you take into consideration the salary that we pay our clerk, which is not much, and then the cost of a website for him to use, and you put that together, is it is it an acceptable amount to be spent to make it flow, to have all those things in one spot, to where, and I'm not really concerned if it interacts with our city website or not. I'm really not. What I'm concerned is, as a citizen, can I go to the city website and our Civic Plus website that we have for our clerk? Can there be a link on our site that will take us to City Council Civic Plus website? And I think in the cost, at what cost is it too much? Would it be too much that we would say we're walking away from this? What cost would that be? Because right now, if we get the program and you take into consideration his salary, which is what we make, which is, to me, underpaid.
Sure.
$6,600 a year. With this program, you're coming in at under $12,000 a year. So $1,000 a month, and he gets what he needs to But as you said, if it's additions and we need to buy a Civic Plus site, I think we should take that into consideration. Maybe we shouldn't necessarily move forward with this purchase, but I think thanks to Ms. Breedlove and bringing in the fact that these things don't work without those additions, maybe this isn't the answer, thank you, but like she said, is the answer for us to get a council separate website, it's ran by council. Our council clerk is trained to do it. There is no having to go to the administration to have an approval to do anything, because it'll be the only thing that the administration will have to do is put a link on our current council page that says, if you want to see what council's doing, here's the link to the Civic Plus council page. And then that gives council full control over council business. And we're not having to report to the principal to get permission.
Haven't we already purchased Civic Plus software?
We did for the Parks and Recreation. It's not online. It'll be on about March is what I was instructed. So
But it integrates into our city website, right?
it will.
Yeah, the rec management software is one of the very few absolute standalone products that they have.
Listen, I can ask Mr. Clerk, how much time do you spend on preparing things for city council?
For minutes or agendas?
Just in general, whatever Civic Plus would help you with, what?
You mean I spend, depending on how long the meeting is or how much agenda items, depends on how long I'm doing it. If it's minutes, it's taking a couple hours.
So if you compared Civic Plus from what you've seen, how much time would it save you?
I think it's, you mean, because I'm looking at the proposal that was sent, and based on the pricing of the 5,200, that'd be for the premium software, which does include, based on these check marks, the clerk-controlled voting and roll call, which is kind of the things that I discussed in the email sent. And so those are the things that I think take up a lot of tedious time of like copying and pasting all the voting and clicking, which I could just do automatically in here. I'm not really worried about, I could also type as I'm going in here, so it just kind of would save on some of those more tedious tasks.
And can I just?
Just to piggyback off that. So if you had to estimate how many hours you put in total, coming to meetings, doing the agendas, doing everything, say in December for 2 meetings, how many hours do you think?
The 2 meetings in December. The 2 meetings in December were shorter.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
So you say, I know each meeting.
Like,
probably,
if you had
each
to-
meeting was an hour,
Okay.
right? Probably. So that's 2 hours. I probably spend at least, depending on the week, it could be up to 1 to 2 hours prepping for an agenda to get everything downloaded, sent out, put together. And then I'm spending, a couple hours doing minutes, depending on, if I'm having to, most of the time, depends on the length of the conversation and how much detail that's needed.
So we could say per meeting, we'll just say we estimate 2 hours a meeting, 2 hours for minutes, 2 hours to prep per meeting.
Sure.
We'll say 6 hours per meeting. Would that be fair?
I don't, I guess, track my time, but sure.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I'm just curious how much time, because if we're talking about buying a whole nother website for $10,000, $15,000 plus, the monthly and yearly, I'm just curious, like Councilman Norman was talking about, was where is the point?
Right, where's the point that we see
Now-
now? But I have
Now,
another.
Mr. Clerk,
Good.
in your email, and you had talked to clerks in other places, they did not buy the website, but they were able to use the program with the functionality you thought it would have. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did speak to 2 cities that don't have the website the one city told me they simply embedded a code into their website and that's how they did it. That's,
Okay.
I obviously not in those cities, so I'm not sure. That's just what they told me. And that's why I copy and paste that into the email.
Yeah, just to speak to that, the way that our website is, we would not be able to embed a code or do like a hand-created API, because those are 2 things I did ask about. But I do want to let you know that council already has software that would eliminate the hours you have to spend on minutes, and I would be glad to show you.
I've used Zoom transcripts. They usually are not very correct.
Have you used them?
There's a lot of editing you have to still do, so.
It would still cut down greatly on the amount of time that you spend on minutes. And they're constantly updating. Like Zoom transcripts is one of the better ones that are out there on the market. And I think that that would help greatly if we were able to utilize that for you, and it's something that's already paid for by council.
I have another question for you, because we asked you how long you're here at the meetings, how long you transcribe, how long you, all that. How about the time that you have to, because I'm assuming where you work, do you work during the day?
Yes.
Like 8 to 5?
Mm-hmm.
So when you have to go and, isn't there times that you have to go and file certain things here in town?
Yeah, if I have to come and, you mean file legislation, which Eve mentioned earlier, but I need to come in and probably spend a couple hours scanning in legislation. Yeah, I have to do that on my own.
And then as it is right now, I'm posting it to the website, so there's some time taken away from you. I can tell you that sometimes it takes me a couple hours to get those up and then wait for approval. So there's another couple of hours. You know, like I said, I don't know if this is something we want to, or if we want to.
Well, this is the second reading. There was new information brought forward tonight. What are the possibilities that our clerk and Ms. Breedlove can get together and figure out whether or not what we currently have is going to work, thus saving us the money? I don't think there was really a discussion at this point of buying a website, other than she believes that's a necessary thing that we would have to do in order to use this. Obviously, I wouldn't be in favor of doing a whole nother website. I mean, if they were going to do the website, they could we should have maybe looked at them to begin with to do the website for all the functionality that it has within all their programs. But we're already down that road. We're past that point at this point. So we've got a couple weeks if the clerk and Ms. Breedlove can get together and decide whether that's a workable solution. And quite honestly, Mr. Clerk, if you come to me and say afterwards, I still like the Civic Plus program better, then I'm going to push that we get that. And Ms. Breedlove said she's willing to work with us either way. So you both said that. So I think that's probably what we should do, is leave it on and see if that can happen.
At the next meeting, that's aware.
Pardon me?
I will not be at the next meeting.
Okay.
Mr. President, you're aware.
But in the meantime.
Yeah, I can meet with you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can work around your work schedule too.
Nope.
Any other questions? Okay. On to Resolution 102-25. Can I get a motion to read by title number, please?
So moved.
Second.
Resolution 10225, a resolution increasing appropriations. The council would like to enter into a contract with Street Scan for sidewalk assessment.
So, yes, so this is a request to appropriate money to enter into contract with Street Scan for sidewalk assessment. I think sidewalk assessment is kind of an understatement on what this program will do, and maybe it needs clarified. I'm just kind of glad that the administration of 9 years that's done nothing about sidewalks really is interested in learning about this, so I'll try to explain it. The way it works is it's not backwards. We're not doing it backwards. Right now, we don't know how bad our sidewalks are or what it's going to cost to fix them. We have no clue. We have no clue because, one, we didn't have ordinances. The ordinance was not in place so that our zoning guy could go out and actually evaluate, because he had nothing to evaluate with. It just said, your sidewalks look wrong, you got to fix them. So part of this plan, we've already addressed in ordinance 21224. This one, what it does is it is an assessment of all of our sidewalks, and it's a sidewalk repairing program. So let me specify that, because I watched a little bit of the public service meeting, and one of the questions by, I think it was Mr. Long, is, well, what if they don't have a sidewalk? Well, if you don't have a sidewalk, then you don't need to repair it, right? It doesn't need repair because you don't have one. Now, I say that not excluding the person who may not have a sidewalk now because they've let it degrade down to now it's just a bunch of rubble with grass growing through it. That's different. There was a sidewalk there. It was supposed to be there. It should be there. So it needs repair. So I just want to clarify that. The other question was, what's to stop the guy that has this degrading sidewalk from bringing in a backhoe and just pulling out the sidewalk and putting down gravel? Well, we have ordinances and codes that say the sidewalk has to be, it's like 4 foot, and there are things. So your neighbor can't just go out there and destroy it and do that. So that's kind of a non-issue too. But the way this program works is they come in, they assess. It's not, they do tell us which roads are bad and how bad, or I'm sorry, I keep saying roads, which streets are bad, how bad they are, and they rate them just like we did with our street assessment. But what also comes with this program is the ability to, if we decide as a city we're going to spend $500,000 that year, this program, you put in that $500,000 budget, and based on the data that was collected, it will give you a suggested, and this also it'll give you a suggested which sidewalks you actually do. It kind of takes it out of our hands, so instead of us picking and choosing, it tells us, here's the bad ones. And you can also put within that, okay, if it's an F, let's say it's rated from A to F, if you want to work this year strictly on Fs, you can put in the percentage. Like out of that 500, we want to spend 50% on Fs. It will generate a report that shows you, okay, if you're going to spend 500 and 50 of it goes here, it'll show you that. So, and then if you want to go to the next level, so you can do it by percentages, and it'll tell you based on that. It's not based on who lives there. It's not based on preferential. It's based on just the data that it collects. So it does that for you. It also keeps track of the maintenance that you do on those properties, so the city will have that on file. It'll also have pictures, so that if you are the enforcer and you need to see, okay, I need to see this spot, it'll take you directly to that spot, just like the current road assessment that we have where you can go and look. And then you have the opportunity, when that property or those sidewalks are updated and they're fixed, you have the opportunity to download that picture so it replaces the old picture. So you have the opportunity to keep it up and current. So it does that for you.
Wait, Mike, okay, question. You mentioned 500,000.
I just threw that out there.
So what's the 500,000? Or even if you said 100,000?
Say we as a city decide we're going to put 500,000 to fixing sidewalks.
Then would we be reimbursed by the owner?
Well, that's the next step. But we don't, right, at this point, we don't know what that number is. 500,000.
I mean, yeah, it could have been 100,000, but
Right.
what you're saying, if
So
city budget's 100,000.
Right, city
repair
budget's 100,000, and then the next,
neglected sidewalks, but the plan is to get reimbursed by the owner.
the eventual plan is either to be reimbursed by the owners.
Okay, so let's say somebody's sidewalk's rated F. Do we have somebody to approach the owner?
So
and say, hey,
so the
your
way-
sidewalk's in violation?
So I'm going to tell you, the city I'm kind of modeling after is Hilliard. So what Hilliard did is they went through the same process. They had to go through, fix their ordinances first. Then they had Street Scan come in, do the assessments, and then as a council or a city, they said, okay, we're going to notify, well, what I feel we should do that's different from Hilliard is it's going to take us a year to get everything set up to do this. And during that time, we can use this software to repair our own city property sidewalks. So while we're doing that, then when the next year, this program, we can put them in zones, and then we can decide during that time, do we send out, the way it works over there is they warn you, they give you a year's notice. Next year, we're going to be in zone 1, the notices are sent out, and they tell them, okay, you're in zone 1, you have until August, whatever, to either fix it yourself, or after that point, we will come in and fix it. If we fix it, then you can either pay us up front for fixing it, or it'll be assessed to your taxes.
I think that's where my questions came from in the meeting the other day was, and why I was saying backwards is it's being explained now. So I think there's a couple things. First thing is I think there's 2 different programs that we're talking about. Is it Street Scan and Street Logic?
Yeah, the program that we picked is the one that has both of those, Street Scan and Street Logic.
Okay. And so city council's plan is we do this and then we grade them and then we're going to budget money. I just want to be clear. We're going to budget money out of our budget and tell people that they need to fix them. If they don't fix them, then we're going to go fix them. And then we're going to send them a bill. And if they don't pay, we're going to assess their taxes. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is one way you could do it.
Well, that's why I'm saying that you say that's one way to do it.
Well, Mayor, isn't that currently what we do?
What's the plan? Well, we haven't really leaned on people about sidewalks. And that's why I was saying I think we need to try to figure out what we want to do. There's a lot of people in town, you send them a $5,000 bill, they're not going to be able to pay it. They're not going to be able to pay it. And that's where I think we need to come together and figure out how to move forward with this before we pay $50,000 to have all these things done and then go, well, how are we going to fix them? Who's going to pay for it? Like, that's the plan that I'm asking for is after we get this back and they're graded and we say, okay, we're going to start with the Fs. There we go. We're moving. Who's paying for it?
I think with a $20 million budget, the city can do it a little bit at a time.
Well, no.
Well, we don't have a $20 million budget, but that's.
We're not going to get into that. Let's try to stay focused. So, I'm not you.
No.
The way, like I said, the way it works is, we don't necessarily have to. There is going to be money up front that the city will have to have set aside, but it's mainly for those who won't be able to afford it. Those are the ones that we're going to actually have to.
Well, that's not true.
So who do you pick? Who can afford it and who can't? How are we going to figure that out?
And that will be part of the process that we have to continue on. This isn't a catch-all situation. There are going to be steps, just like the first step, like I said, is putting in the guidelines of what is a bad sidewalk with the ordinance.
And I agreed with that, and I appreciate you guys doing that. That made a lot of sense.
We go through, and as we go through this, that's a discussion we're going to have. But if we don't know how big the problem is, like I said, we have no idea what it's going to cost. This program will tell us exactly what it's going to cost for each of these properties to bring them up to where they need to be.
You're saying they'll tell us what it'll cost for the repairs?
For the repairs?
You'll be able to, because right now we don't know.
Like average cost? I don't.
No, you'll actually be able to pull up that area that you, like, say it's zone 1. Say it's, we'll just go by this.
Forget the zones, Michael. I think you can look at sidewalk feet. At some point, a number gets put in that a panel, a 4x6 panel, the cost of that is that. That
X
can
amount
be
of
plugged
dollars.
in, and it can read that and say, in some cases, the whole panel has to be replaced. In other places, it may have to be shaved down. It might just have to be repaired just to be brought to code. It's supposed to do that, right? I mean, it can tell us how bad that is.
This program will tell you based on, I mean, you can actually get a real quote from a company. You can say, here's the area we want to do. And then as a city, we can say, okay, these are the properties. They'll be able to take the data from this. They'll be able to give the city a quote saying, well, this is probably what it's going to cost to fix this area.
Yeah, I know we could get local quotes. I understand that part. But I think it still comes back to who is going to pay for these? Are we going to
Well,
force?
eventually,
Are we going to force the citizens to pay for this?
okay, so if,
I'm just asking because
and
I think there's going to be a lot of people come in.
Let's say we pick a zone, let's just say,
Ward 3, we'll just go
That's
Ward.
Ward 3.
Ward 3.
So Ward 3, we're going in, unless, say, 25% of the properties need to repair their,
Probably more than that.
I mean, okay, 50%. What kind of outrage? do you
Okay,
think-
but now let me ask you,
think the
though.
city's going to get?
Okay, and I understand there's going to be outrage, but at what point does it become, I mean, where do we have to, I mean, eventually we have to be the heavy, or else people are not, I mean, if you're sitting here today saying we are never going to force people to improve their properties, there's got to come a point where we have to be the heavy here and say you have to bring your property up to code.
Right, I mean, if they're in violation, to the code, yeah, but I don't.
But
we
how,
need to- I don't-
but at this time, we've got a part-time enforcement that doesn't have time. There's bigger things out there that he's trying to accomplish, that he's not going out and enforcing these. This program, he won't have to go out there. It'll create a list for him that he'll know, well, this property right here has X amount of panels that need to be replaced.
They come out.
The letter goes out. You have until
Yes,
such and
we
such
have to.
date to replace them. It's a terrible thing, but, the alternative is to do nothing, like we have. And what used to be 25% in Ward 3, that's probably now, I exaggerated with 50%, but I bet you it's 30, 40%. There's
Well,
not,
I think it's hard to say, Michael, but you have the data, a letter goes out. There's going to be plenty of people that you know what, I know I fixed it, now I've got a letter, I'm going to take care of it. They're going to do that. You're going to get voluntary compliance with this in a lot of cases, and there's going to be people that can't afford it. That's something you can contemplate. You don't have to contemplate that immediately because you don't know how bad it is.
Right.
But you can contemplate that as a council and say, we're going to set aside a fund. Let's say it's only $50,000. I don't care what the number is, $50,000. If they are in that situation, they're on Social Security, they're disabled, they can't afford it. Maybe the city says, apply for this, we're going to put we as city council put money into a fund that we're going to put in there every year. Whether it's 50,000 or 100,000 or whatever that number is. And if someone has a sidewalk that they can't afford, we can be the heavy and we can say, we're going to bill you. Some places bill over multiple years, like 3 years. So they split the bill up. If it's $3,000, it's $1,000 a year on the property taxes. That's a choice council can make later once you have the data. But we can also put that fund out there that, if you want to apply because you can't afford this, you truly can't afford it because you're disabled. If you have this issue and we pay for it and the city just realizes, yeah, we paid for it because they had a true hardship.
I think part of the misconception when it comes to people at large is that the city is somehow responsible for maintaining the sidewalks. That responsibility does not fall to the property owners, and I think we need to start with a very clear message that's a misconception. People that have properties with a sidewalk are responsible for maintaining that sidewalk. So if that message gets out there, and then if you come up with here's the rule of law, then you should also come up with all of the answers for all of the questions. Well, what if I can't afford this? So, there's option one is if we have a contractor that's, going to be doing large-scale works, then we can reduce the cost because of volume. If here's an application for people that are on disability income for some kind of subsidy or, I don't know if a CHIP grant would apply to a sidewalk issue. I don't know if it would or not. But there's research that we can do. There's maybe some financing options that we might be able to offer to anybody that is a property owner that's looking at a large sidewalk bill. But the reality is it's not the city's responsibility to do the repairs. It is the city's responsibility to enforce the code. And the codes that have gone unenforced have gotten a population that's gotten extremely complacent with regard to those kind of property maintenance issues, and it's got to stop. The sidewalks are ridiculous.
There are some cities that take full responsibility for the sidewalks, though.
I don't know if we want to do
Dublin.
that, but
Yeah.
Dublin doesn't.
But Dublin's
Bill,
got
did you
deeper
wanna-
pockets.
Say something.
I just don't see forcing a homeowner to repair a public sidewalk. But-
So, I mean, this isn't going to happen overnight. I mean, I'm well aware of that. But I would say, if you're truly interested in how the program will eventually work, that you should go to the Hilliard website and look at their Safe Sidewalk program. Because that's pretty much what I'm trying to model this with. This wasn't Mike just sat at home one day and was like, got an idea. No, I did some research.
No,
and it's working in these other communities, and I'm sure they have the same issues. There's
Everybody
people
complains about the sidewalks. Everybody complains about the sidewalk. Who's going to fix the sidewalk? Well, guess what?
Right. And I mean, the other communities have the
Look
same problems.
inside, yeah?
They have the same problems we do. They have the same,
Yeah.
people who can pay, people who can't pay, people who are on fixed incomes, and yet they're getting it done. So I don't think we can use that as a reason not to do it. And I think this program, I think it does everything for us.
I don't
I
think
think
it
you're
does.
right that it grades it for, I mean, I understand, and I know you did your research, and this was the discussion I was trying to get going, and I'm
Yeah, I'm
glad
sorry,
that
I
we're.
wasn't there.
No, and I'm glad that we're doing it now, because, and that's what I was saying was, we're going to send these people out to grade all these things, but we don't have plan B or step B and C done of, okay, how are we going to do this? Are we going to give grants to people low to moderate income? How are we going to give these grants? Who's going to administrate it?
Right.
What does application look like? How much money are we going to put into the budget? How much do we want to do every year? Like all these questions that, I don't want to get this thing back and then work through all this stuff as they continue to deteriorate and the gradings might change, right? When we grade the roads, and then we're immediately saying, okay, we're fixing these roads and we're moving, right?
Right.
I'm not saying this is a bad idea and that we shouldn't do it. All I'm saying was that we don't want to put the horse before the cart and figure out how we're going to do these things, who's going to administrate them, how are we going to tell, a single lady that she has to now pay $5,000 for a new sidewalk. How are all these things going to happen? And that's what I was saying. I'm not saying not to do it. I think that all those questions, we should have that legislation ready too and push it all together.
Yeah, but I think before we can answer any of those questions you just said, we have to know how big the problem is, and how much it's going to cost for that problem, and this will allow us to do that.
I don't think so. When an old lady comes in here and sits here and says, I can't afford $5,000, what are you going to do? And you go, well, we might do an application process. The city might pay for it. We don't have that done. That's what I'm getting at is.
Right, but the program is not, this software doesn't start the program.
I
It doesn't start
understand
the
that.
program.
I understand
This
that.
software gives us information so that we can start a program, because we'll have solid, real numbers, not what we think numbers. We'll actually know, here is this area, and here's what it is going to cost. And then, like you said, then you're right. Then we do have to find a way, because we're going to have to figure out a way, how are we going to get this fixed?
So do you think gradings, if they went out and graded today, do you think the gradings would be different in a year?
I would say they could probably be different after each season.
That's what I'm getting at, is why would we grade them before we have the process of how we're going to pay for it and who's going to pay for it? Wait until we have the process and then go grade them. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And I'll leave it at that. You guys, it's almost 9 o'clock. I'm starving.
Well, again, those letters aren't going to go out immediately. You'll have a better idea once the grading's done to see that you've got 37% of your properties are grade F, right? That gives you an idea how to do this. And just to address part of that, I've been told many times while as a council member, well, just go ahead and take it to council. We'll work through it during the readings.
Yeah.
Right? And so we're going to have to work through this process. Yeah, I don't think we could design the program up front without having this information anyway. I don't think.
How does the city decide, like the places that don't have a sidewalk, how does the city decide who has to have a sidewalk and who doesn't have to have a sidewalk?
My assumption is, and Jennifer, you can stop me, but it was all about code back in the day, right? So when houses were built, you know, back in the day, there used to be some deals done, is all I can say. Things were built in floodplains, things were done here and there, things were built without sidewalks. Now we have code. If you build residential, right, you have to have a sidewalk in the front. So back in the day, we did not, I would assume we did not have those codes.
So if they were grandfathered in to not require a sidewalk, they would still not be required to have a sidewalk now, based
could
on our
change
codes
that.
currently?
I
Yeah.
was going to say theoretically that you're correct, that's the way it works now, but it can be changed, and that's one of the things Hilliard did also, was they had those spots, just like we do, like, what is it, off of High Street back there? I always get Channing and the Windsor. Is it Channing and Windsor that go off of High Street? One of them-
Andover, yeah.
Is that what it is? One
I
of them
think that's
back there
what you're talking
doesn't
about.
have sidewalks, right?
There's a lot of places. Places
Right.
on Main
And
Street
so-
don't have
and so
sidewalks.
one of the things, and I'll make this quick. Anyways, one of the things that Hilliard did was said, okay, from this point on, if you sell the property, either it has to be upgraded to the current, as if you were building it today. You'd have to put in a sidewalk before.
That's not a bad idea.
That's one of the things that they did. So, and that's an option that we have to where, you know, then, that's all I'm saying. I'm shutting up now. Thank you.
My neighbor's 186 and the other side's 200.
Okay,
It cost me $20,000.
unfortunately, there's no new business. So we'll go on to roundtable. Michael, you can start.
Got a lot to say. No, I don't. Listen, first of all, I'd like to apologize to Ms. Breedlove for my inappropriate way of speaking. I do apologize for that. I got caught up in the emotion. We'll talk later because I did send those on the dates that I said. I'm going to have to look at my computer and your computer. So I want to apologize for that. That was uncalled for, and I like you. We get along. I don't know. I lost my head, okay? I apologize. And Mr. Anthony, I do apologize for it not being up. It might have been, I'm going to go home. Trust me, I'm going to leave here, go home, and go to my computer and go, what the hell happened? And it's probably maybe my fat finger hit the wrong button. I might have hit cancel instead of send. I don't know. And I apologize if that wasn't up for you. Because, one of my biggest things is transparency and getting the information out. And I failed you this time, and I truly apologize. Other than that, wow, we got a lot on our plate up here. Mr. Smith, thank you for coming. Let Mr. Gross know that I appreciated that he came. I love listening to him talk. He does clear the muddy waters a little bit. Again, I want to say that, our city workers, especially during the storm, as the mayor said, that snow just for me as a private citizen, man, that raises your stress level hugely. But I can only imagine being responsible for calls and being responsible for scraping and picking up the trash and it's stress on our workers, and I do want them to know I do appreciate our workers. I am critical that I don't think we clear our streets as well as we can, but that's not on our workers. I think that's us and our administration that might have to go out and see what these other cities are doing that are able to get it done. But other than that, I appreciate everyone who works with us and for us, and have a nice weekend, and we'll see you at the next council meeting.
John?
I'd like to thank Shannon and Wes for an excellent discussion on these ordinances, help us understand us much better. And I want to keep it short. Just good luck for the Buckeyes. Hope we tear the Irish up. That's all.
Shannon.
I've talked enough for tonight. Let's go home.
Andy?
It's been a very informative night, so I appreciate everyone that's provided information, so that's it.
Rich?
I too want to thank Shannon and her counterpart out here. Good job tonight. Thanks for everybody coming out. Man, I've got to thank all the city employees. Great job. Bill, I know you've been out many hours. I saw you the other day. I don't even know how you were walking. But thanks for doing a great job. Thanks for sanitation department. I know they had some trucks break down this week. Thank them. It's cold out there. I would not want to be on the side of a trash truck at whatever it was, 10 degrees, whatever it is. But thank you. Thank you to our police, firemen, EMTs, everybody. And thank everybody here getting into work. We appreciate it very much. There's a new sheriff coming to town on Monday at 12 o'clock, and I feel like everything's going to start getting good. And I say that because of what you are trying to do. I'm just praying that the interest rates go whoosh, and everything comes back together like it should be. A little bit of common sense that we haven't had in the past 4 years. And things will get good. And, you know, we got to be ready because the ball's going to start rolling and we got to be ready to roll with it. So next safety service meeting is February 11th, 2025 in the conference room at 6 p.m. Thank you all.
Brent?
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out, and stay safe out there. That's all we got.
All right, Greg?
You know, I really appreciated the conversations that went on tonight, even the sidewalks. I think that's something we have to have a discussion with the administration, council, you know, the administrator of that, the zoning guy. We all have to kind of try to get on the same page to make that happen. The sidewalks are awful. Finance will be Tuesday, 5:30 next door in the conference room. The police get a lot of love. The firemen get a lot of love at Christmas time. I'm going to challenge my fellow council members to bring in some cash. Let's put some cash into a fund, and let's at least buy the lunch for the sanitation department and the street department because they're out in this weather. And everybody, we'll just kick in a little bit and we'll help take care of them for a lunch. What do you think?
If we can do that legally, I'm all for it.
Yep. I think we can just put some in there.
Mad cow.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, I stand corrected.
Hallelujah.
Brent, you said, he asked me earlier, he said, you think it's going to be long? I said, I don't think so.
You did a lot of work there.
Oh, okay.
I bet your eyeballs
Oh,
are
okay.
all right for doing that.
All right, thank you.
Your taxes without
I have some even harder questions. I didn't want to embarrass them by asking.